YouTube, Duel here from Zephyr, and today I'll bring you some commentary from a live duel at locals. On the top, got myself playing Majespecters, and on the bottom we have my opponent playing Yubel. This is Yubel with the Sacred Beast engine and Unchained, so you can expect some very powerful endboards. Obviously, one thing I need to be quite careful of is Super Poly, and the fact that Yubel doesn't target. So instantly, my Majespecter's built-in nice protection of not being able to be targeted or destroyed kind of goes out the window. So as you can see from my opening hand, I've opened up Ogama, I've opened up Majespecter Draco, Majesty Maiden, plus Winds, and of course a Call by the Grave as well. Now ultimately the only thing that will stop a Majespecter is of course Ash Blossom, so I'm kind of protected in the form with Call by the Grave of that one. But by going with the Ogama, what this will allow me to do is to guarantee that I get access to one of my Majespecter spells or traps, even if they do have Ash. Now, of course, I could just Call by the Grave it, but the idea is the fact that they can't target it kind of makes it a little bit tricky, and then the fact that Ogama sets it rather than adds it, meaning that they can't Ash it. So on top of that, I then also opened up the Winds, which arguably so, if they do have an Ash Blossom, they can very easily use it here, and that will ultimately kind of stump my turn a little bit. But the idea with this is it now gets me access to Bambuku while also giving me access to Tornado, and that's going to lead me to the Porcupine, which can lead me into a Link 2 being Beyond the Pendulum, or of course the brand new Majespecter New. Now obviously the issue with this, and you'll see this in a minute with the Route of Player Go, because I don't have complete scales in the hand already, as soon as I go to New, if that gets stopped with an Imperm, which is ultimately Imperm and Veiler, is ultimately the best hand trap that can stop it, I'm in a bit of trouble. However, because I'm able to reset the Winds, the reason that it's slightly beneficial is it means that during my opponent's turn, as long as I have a Majespecter in the grave or the hand, I have the ability to summon it, or of course I can tribute off the New during my opponent's turn to get access to a Bambuku, which will allow me to start my combo all over again. So that's the main reason behind this. So even if New does eat a Imperm here, which I suppose it's kind of a nice little sacrifice in the sense that, you know, all of your other Majespecters can't be Impermed, but New can't be Ashed, which is quite interesting because obviously it adds from the extra deck, from the main deck to the extra deck, and then extra deck to the hand. So a little bit different on that one. We're ultimately going to set 4 with the New and then pass turn from here. Now, I do make a misplay. It did get hit with an Imperm. I do make a misplay, and I will admit that openly. Once we get to it, I'll explain it because I keep forgetting certain selective words on Majespecters, but we'll see that as it goes. So we're setting 4. Now obviously one of these is Called by the Grave. We already know Winds, we already know Tornado. So the initial plan behind this would be that you would go Winds, Bambuku, and work it from there. Anyway, so my opponent opens up with Opening the Spirit Gates, which is a very decent one to get, because that's going to give them instant access to the Dark Beckoning Beast. We're going to utilize that as a normal summon in order to gain access to a second Spirit at the Opening Gates. Now, ideally, you want these to be the other way around, because if you can get 2 Sacred Beasts, you're able to ultimately lead yourself, or Dark Beckoning Beast, lead yourself into Yuma play and Unchained play. But if you open it up the other way around, 2 gates aren't that great, except for the fact that it's just additional discard fodder that you can then add back from the graveyard as long as you control a level 10, because Opening Spirit Gates is insanely busted for that particular kind of element, which is really nice. The other thing you need to worry about is if they've already opened up a Samsara D Lotus, that will then cause issues as well. So the moment they now activate Nadir Servant, I know that they're not going to be going into the extra deck, which means they don't have Super Poly. Or in this exact scenario, Super Poly is not going to be much help for them, meaning that there was no direct route to a Yubel. Now, this is my misplay. So the misplay was I activated Winds in response to something. And the reason that this is a misplay is because when the chain resolves, Majespecters are when effects. So because I am chain link 2 or higher, my Majespecter missed timing. And I knew it as soon as I did it, but obviously I wasn't going to take it back. I just kind of committed to the play, and what I should have done is allowed it to resolve. For some reason, I thought that they might have sent an elderly entity and then tried to target the Winds, which would have put me in the exact same position that we're in now anyway. So this was definitely a misplay on my behalf. What I should have done is waited for the Nadir Servant to go through. In this scenario, Garura effect draw. waited for that to resolve, and then once it was an open game state, then activate wins. So I think I just feared Natis a lot more, feeling that if a Natis was sent first, you then send Garura later. I know I had Call by the Grave, but I didn't really want to waste Call by the Grave on a Garura, and I didn't really want to waste it on a Natis either. Yeah, okay, the draw can be powerful depending on what they get. Like if they draw into a Yubel, they've got the ability to discard it to the graveyard and then bring it back. So all they would need to do is link off the Dark Beckoning Beast, and you'd be in a good position. So it was a little bit of a risky move here. Obviously, I know they would have Maximus. I could have again activated Call by the Grave here before they activate Maximus, banish the Garura, and then they don't have a way to get into it. But you can never guarantee that, because they could very easily turn Dark Beckoning Beast. Obviously not now, because they've activated the Dear Servant. But for future kind of ideas, if you are playing Yubel, is technically what you could do is you could turn Dark Beckoning into like an Almirage, and the idea is that you're trying to then turn it into another extra deck monster. So you've got that, which I think is Secure Gardener. So we're going to activate Tornado here. We're going to tribute off the Bombuku, and we're going to target the Maximus. And the reason for that is I know that off of the Maximus, they could then send an Elder Entity. They would then send what I would assume would be a way to get to a fusion spell, or like you can send Albulanatus, you can send Chimera Flesia, and then you could have sent another card as well. So when Maximus gets going, the two I could send would be a Garura. Great, I get a nice little draw. But then the other card wouldn't be that effective for me. And that's only because I'm playing the Super Poly version. And I didn't want to give away to my opponent that I was playing Super Poly at this point. So I thought Tornado was was a better way of going. Because again, Natis comes down. Natis can then try and take out the back row. And then if I activate Tornado and tribute off my monster, I'm then leaving my other two back row completely open. So we're going to draw for turn. Obviously, I still have the Majesty Maiden. I don't know exactly what's along that back row, so I do need to be a little bit careful of just a general Super Poly. We're going to activate Prosperity, and this is where I'm not completely sold on Prosperity in this deck, because every time I played it that weekend, I only ever banished 3. Because the rest of the extra is like quite important, especially in the Super Poly version. Like in this kind of matchup, Super Poly's still very good. So we see Super Poly, we see Ash, and we see Imperm, which all 3 are not what I wanted to see. Like I wanted to see a starter. I wanted to see Bombuku, Yata, and I didn't see either of those, considering 2 Bombukus are already in my extra deck. But literally, if I'd saw 2 of the Porcupine, 1 of the Raccoon, or 1 of Bombuku, or any of the 3 Yatas, I would have been in a good position, because then I know I don't need to worry about Imperm. The only thing I need to fear is an Ash Blossom. So yeah, like this is quite a tricky take, because you can also see that I've only got 1 card left in the hand as well. I think at this exact point, one of my back row was Super Poly. And the irony is that I didn't want to send a Garura the last turn because I didn't want to give away I was playing Super Poly. How silly of me. So very, very interesting on this one. Like they're great cards to have. But Imperm, like Ash is okay. Imperm's not the ideal in this exact scenario. Super Poly's good, but if my opponent doesn't put another monster on the board that I have a Super Poly target for, like losing that discard advantage at that exact moment in time is not worth it. Whereas if I already have a Super Poly set, taking an Ash or taking an Imperm will be much more effective and much more beneficial for me in that scenario. So you also need to remember that as cool as it would be to use Majesty Maiden to get a field spell, which of course would be the Majespecter field spell itself, it needs to be Pendulum summoned or special summoned via a Draco effect. So that is not going to happen either. I've kind of hurt myself a little bit by setting a card in the Pendulum Zone, but I did, in my defense, set Call by the Grave in that position. So I was like, you know what, this is probably the one that is most likely to be used early doors. And then when it got to the end phase and I still had it, I was like, right, okay, I better set it. And then if my opponent puts a Yubel in the graveyard, I can Call by the Grave, get rid of the Yubel, and I'm in an okay position. But that never happened. So I was trying to hold on to the Majesty Maiden as much as possible, which is also why I would have liked to have seen, like I didn't even need to see a Bambuku, a Yata, or a Porcupine in the last one. All I would have needed to do would have been to see a Scale. And again, annoyingly, because I got rid of both the cards, or my opponent got rid of the Garura in the graveyard, and then I got rid of Maximus, there's nothing in the graveyard for me to just shotgun Call by the Grave for anyway. So yeah, I I kind of messed my play up that one itself. But normal summon Majesty Maiden, attack the Dark Beckoning Beast just to make sure they don't have that monster on the board, because very easily during their turn they can get another monster on the board, make a SP Little Knight, and that's a whole nother story or another pain in the backside to deal with, because that will constantly keep banishing my stuff and picking apart my board. So it looks like they top deck Spirit of Yubel. We're going to activate Spirit of Yubel to discard it. I'm just double checking, and I'm 99% sure on this one that it doesn't target. But you discard the Yubel, and then this is where Call by the Grave is going to hit that Spirit of Yubel. Like, I can't have that card coming back to the board, because as soon as that Spirit of Yubel hits the board, searches out Nightmare Pain. Nightmare Pain then gets original Yubel, and the board just builds and builds and builds. So now, because it doesn't target, it does mean that it can bring back the Dark Beckoning Beast. Thankfully for me, unfortunately for my opponent, Dark Beckoning Beast is only on normal summon. So it's now a point of walling up a little bit. I know the back row is arguably stuff like Imperms, Super Polys, maybe even Eternal Favourites. So that's kind of another reason why you don't want a Yubel monster hitting the board, because if that happens, you know that they're going to very easily be able to go, okay, cool. As soon as that hits the board, no matter what I activate, I can very highly likely assume I'm going to get hit with a Super Poly, which completely clears my board off. Unfortunately, the draw was an Ash Blossom, so I now have 2 Ashes in the hand. Grr. The set is still Super Poly, and I've kind of resided myself to, I'm going to Super Poly their board. That's what I'm saving it for. Like, they haven't threatened to get rid of it at this exact moment in time. So opening up a second Spirit Gate is not bad. Or did I have the second Spirit? Because I'm pretty sure one of the back row set is a Spirit Gate, maybe. But the idea is activating the Spirit Gate, get a Dark Beckoning Beast, normal summon a Dark Beckoning Beast, and then you go again. So normal summon Dark Beckoning Beast, attempt to search out a Spirit Gates, but I think that they've got all 3 Spirit Gates. I think they top deck the Spirit Gate the last turn. Discard a Spirit Gate, bring back the Beast. And obviously they don't control a level 10, so they can't add that Spirit Gate back to the hand. So it looks like they top deck the Spirit Gate for turn, which is interesting. I'm surprised they didn't use Spirit Gate the last turn, but there might have been a reason for that. So now there's 2 Darks on the board. I know exactly what's coming, because those 2 go straight into Yama, and then I'm in a bit of trouble. So we're going to go straight into a Starving Venom. Get rid of both of those. There's no more discards in the hand that I know of, because they've already discarded to bring back the Dark Beckoning Beast already. So it is now literally dealing with that back row. And because I've got a Dark on the board, which is a Dragon, and a Spellcaster, which is a Wind, relatively protected by Super Poly. So that's kind of cool. Now, no battle damage has been taken by either player at this exact moment in time. So we've got a 15 off of Draco on the board. I can't remember what I top decked. I think at this point I was playing around Super Poly. I was like, what cards could they possibly be? And I was double checking Mud Dragon, I was double checking Garura. Now I know both of those require them to be the same types. One needs to be same type and attribute, one needs to be same type, different attributes, I think, or same attribute, different types. So I need to make sure that I didn't put on a Dark on the board or a Wind of a different type, because then I would just get absolutely battered. I'm not sure if they had a... I think at this exact point I remember, or I looked at the hand, they didn't have any hands. So I was like, okay, cool, there's no threat of a Super Poly. So we go for a normal summon of the Majesty Maiden. Again, because neither player has been touched, this is only going to be 3,000 and 5,800, I think. And then it's kind of making sure that if I do go into an extra deck monster, that it doesn't open up the ability to Super Poly during the next turn, because if they do, as soon as they draw a card for turn, they've got the ability to discard and Super Poly. So I now need to make sure that it doesn't fall within those kind of categories. So we'll link both of those off. We'll go into new. New just allows me to complete my scales, which is really important. But again, this is going to get hit by a Call by the Grave with the original new that, if you remember, was put there at the start of the turn. So that's massively annoying. Like, that's a massively big Call by the Grave there. Imperm would have been just as bad, but there's the reason I went to the battle phase first rather than going to new, because if there was an Imperm, if there was a Call by the Grave or anything like that, obviously more so an Imperm than a Call by, I wouldn't be as affected. I still have a few bits to kind of play with. At least I got maximum damage on the board, and now it does mean that during the next turn, if they can't clear off, if they can't clear my board off, I will ultimately win, because that's what's that, 5/8, meaning that there's 22 left. So talents for turn, obviously I'm not using any monster effects, so I don't need to worry about that. So we're going to bring back a Sacred Beast, we're going to normal summon, and now this is one that came out in Phantom Nightmare. When it's sent to the graveyard, it can add back a fiend of the same type and same level, I believe, from the graveyard. I'm just reading it now. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I can't remember off the exact name. Try and Google it as we go. But it is a fiend, so trying to find it without knowing its exact name could be a pain. It's going to go into the Yama, and then that's where Ash is going to come into clutch. So we Ash the Yama. The Yama's still strong enough to kill the new, which is definitely a good way to go about it, because as soon as I can complete my scales, that's then going to go swarm the board. I think I take 500 damage on here, annoyingly. Very decent strong attacks. So the monster's called the Tricorn, which is quite interesting. Tricorn, the... not even going to say it, something concert. Either way, unfortunately, I was enough to attack with Starving Venom and then finish the game off from there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this is kind of giving you a bit of an insight. We'll only do Game 1. Game 2 didn't record, annoyingly. But ultimately, that was, again, a very kind of cool matchup. My opponent opened up, went first. I impermed their Yama, stopped their Sacred Beast, not Sacred Beast plays, Unchained plays, and then they flipped Anti-Spell. And for most of that point, I was trying to play under Anti-Spell, but I got lucky and drew evenly matched, so I was able to break their entire board down to only have Anti-Spell. And then from that point on, it was just survive the turn and then build from there. Anyway, I do have a Elemental Hero Neos build versus a Red Dragon Arching build, which was actually really, really fun. So I'll try and put that together and bring that to you later on this week as well. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe. And of course, happy dueling.